Danger. Joining me is the panel, Federal Liberal MP Garth Hamilton and Evelyn Rae, Sky News presenter, regular commentator on the show, and most importantly, a farmer herself. Now, Evelyn, I don't know if this carbon capture plan is a danger or not, but can you understand that farmers are thinking it's a risk not worth taking?
Look, I think it's important to always look at ways to do things better, but the most important part of that is to not do it recklessly. You know, you always have to take into account the consequences, the negative consequences, and have contingency plans for those sorts of things. And for farmers, contaminated water isn't just a negative consequence. And I know this from experience. Water is literally our source of life on a farm. It is our source of livelihood. It keeps our livestock alive. It keeps our agriculture alive. It's not just a little negative consequence here and there. It can literally mean life and death for a farmer and his stock. You know, I think on the coast, we take for granted perhaps the water situation, but people in Queensland particularly who rely on bore water perhaps and drilling into that water source, 100% they should be concerned because, like I said, water is life. I think that these sorts of things need to be approached with extreme caution. And I think, sadly, so many of these green plans don't take that into consideration. And history shows that they usually inflict more damage than they promise to heal things.
Now, Garth, the Great Artesian Basin actually starts round about where you're right now and extends all the way west for, well, what is it, about 1/6 of the continent or something? What do you make of this?
Well, look, the engineer in me does sort of feel there is some risk, and I would like to know more. Truth is, we don't know. This is untested. But I think the real point here, why is Glencore doing this? The only reason they're doing this is because of our net zero commitments. This is net zero. This is what it looks like. They've got no other reason to be engaged in this. And I think it's a very sensible view to have right now, looking at the concerns people are raising, that there are risks associated with net zero, that there are costs and consequences. And heaven forbid that the worst fears do come true with this experiment. There will be a great environmental cost just simply because we've pushed down this net zero pathway. I've been speaking on this for some time. Wherever you stand on net zero, I think we must admit there are risks. We're seeing that play out now. There are costs and there are consequences. There are other countries around the world having very sensible debates about their commitments that they've made to net zero, UK being one of them. Maybe it's time that we had that debate, certainly around the rate at which we're adopting this. And anyone who's pushing for us to go further can really have a look at the case here in the Great Artesian Basin and tell me why we should proceed with something that is completely untested, unknown, and putting a great natural resource at risk.
Yes, like I say, I have not studied the science well enough to form an opinion, but when there are two points of view, I'm a bit inclined to go with be careful. Some good news, though. Let's have some good news. Although it's probably better news for me than either of you, and better news also for some of the audience, given your age anyway. New research from Germany. They've interviewed 14,000 people at various ages. It says that people at my age, at least, the average perceived start of old age is now about 75. It's crept up, and that's because we live longer, we live healthier. 75. And I remember when I was a kid, someone 40 seemed ancient. Evelyn, 75, I mean, you're a spring chicken. Does it strike you as right, or are you thinking, nah, 65, that's about old?
Look, for someone who's about 4 decades away from 75, I read the study and thought, you beauty, gives us old girl a bit of hope that we haven't hit the wall yet. But I think it's more of a culture thing, to be honest. I think, you know, people these days have to work a lot longer, whether it's cost of living or what. But, you know, look at a few generations ago, kids married their childhood sweethearts. They started having children in their early 20s. They got a mortgage of $30,000, had it paid off, and could retire in their 50s. That was the normal way of life. Whereas you look at now, people, you know, try before they buy for 20, 30 years sometimes. Don't get married till their late 30s, maybe have 1 or 2 kids if they're lucky, have a mortgage of something they would never pay off in their lifetime, and then have to work later and later. So perhaps they're bumping it up because of this cultural thing. But like I said, I'm not complaining because it made me feel a bit younger. So it's good for me.
Well, certainly, it doesn't make me complain. I mean, it's odd, Garth, you know, look, I am 64, and when I say that, I get a little shock every time, even now, because, you know, this is associated with that when I'm 64, the Beatles sang about it. I don't feel that at all. It's really weird. And it's when you think old age actually starts at 75, and, you know, in your mind, that gives you a lot of years to play with where you don't want to be sitting there on the couch or just hitting a golf ball. You want to do something still at that age.
Yes, I only 45 myself, so 50 does seem a long way off, but I'm at the age now where every day I look in the mirror, I look more and more like my Aunt Colleen. You know, old age does creep up on us bit by bit. Probably raised the issue more, I think, around, you know, how do we get the younger kids now into homes? You know, I think of my grandparents, and they were in homes that they built themselves, that they'd owned outright, and they were able to have a reasonably comfortable retirement. Goodness me, I hope we can make that situation available for the coming generations.
Well, Garth, the thing is, if you're not old until you're 75, I tell you what, you'll be having to get me out of this home with dynamite, so the kids have got little hope of inheriting this one for a long time yet, and that would apply doubly over the entire continent. I don't know. Evelyn Rae, Garth Hamilton, thank you both so much for your time.